What's up, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? Boogie2988 coming at you live once again through the power of the internet. And one of the things I do here on this channel, besides talk about video game news, besides whine about my own life, I also do movie reviews, generally for geek culture. A lot of people don't know that because I only post maybe one or two every month. I don't really do trailer reactions or anything like that. I just, after watching a movie, I tend to sit around and talk about it after I watch it if I think it's a movie either you will love or you will hate. If it's mediocre, I'd probably skip the review. Now, this has had a tremendous amount of varying success here on the channel. Sometimes with Stephen King's It review or the Batman vs. Superman review, we're talking 400, 500, 600,000 views on the video. And sometimes with other movies, even if the movie is hot and I expect it to do very, very well, sometimes it only gets 40, 50, 60,000 reviews. And I'm not complaining, by the way. 60,000 views is more than enough to pay for the movie ticket for me and a couple of friends. It's more than enough for me to go out and see the movie, give me a reason to come home and film it. 50,000 people liking something you do is a lot of people, so I'm happy with that. But I never really can predict how the reviews are going to do. I'm pretty sure I'm going to continue to do them because I find them interesting, I find them challenging. It gives me a reason to go out of the house and watch a movie and spend some time with some friends and then come home and share that with you. And as long as there's even 5,000, 10,000 people who enjoy those videos, I think I'll continue to do them. But I want to get your feedback on how to improve on that. The two things I want to do today. Number one, I created a playlist of my movie reviews, which I'll put up somewhere here or at the end card or in the description box or the comment section. You'll be able to find the link to the playlist. I think there's about 25 movie reviews I've uploaded to the channel over the years, so you'll have plenty to watch if you're interested. Secondly, I wanted to give you an idea of what kind of movies I like. People are always asking me about my favorite stuff, my favorite games, my favorite movies, my favorite whatever. So today I thought I would go into some of my favorite movies and why they speak to me, what I like about them. Fair warning, there will be spoilers for these movies, but most of these movies are like 20 years old. So if you haven't seen them by now, I'll try to keep the spoilers light so you will have a reason to go see them, but there might be some minor spoilers anyway. So I think when it comes to fantasy or kids movies, or I think a lot of people would expect me to love like Harry Potter or maybe Lord of the Rings, and I do love those movies. They are fantastic movies, but when I think fantasy, when I think targeted towards a younger audience, I always come back to The Princess Bride because I think it's easily one of my all-time favorite movies, and if you haven't seen this one, I can highly recommend it. But I saw this movie on HBO as a kid, and I watched it, I can't tell you, every time it was on, I would put it on while reading a book or playing a video game. I would listen to this movie, play this movie, and I still do it to this day. I've probably watched this movie 20 or 30 times. I bought the Blu-ray, I bought the VHS tape, and I own a digital download on Xbox as well. What originally drew me to this movie was Andre the Giant. I was a huge WWE fan. I loved wrestling, and when I knew he was in this movie, I couldn't wait to see it on HBO. I finally tuned in to watch it, and what I discovered is one of the best movies I've ever seen. Certainly one of the most quotable movies. I guarantee somebody's already posting quotes from this movie in the comment section below right now, as you should be. In the general premise of this movie, it's about a young couple set during a fantasy time, during a fantasy world that gets separated and then rejoin each other much later in life when many, many things have changed for the both of them. Wesley turns out to be a pirate, a well-run pirate. The young lady is betrothed to marry into royalty. And then, of course, there's the supporting cast. The supporting cast is absolutely phenomenal. And the overall way that the story is told, it's told from like a storybook being read from a grandfather to a grandson. And I really think that's wonderful. But there's so many interweaving plots here when it comes to Inigo Montoya, when it comes to Andre the Giant, when it comes to all of the different characters, the villains, the good guys. There's just so much in this movie. It's not just got an A story, but it's got a B story, a C story, a D story. And they're all very good and very, very memorable. And I know when I look back on this film, I'm certainly looking at it through nostalgia goggles because the practical effects do not stand up. The special effects are not good. Specifically, the ROUSSs, they do not look good. But it's still good enough. It's still good enough to where I think you could show this to a kid today, and hopefully they'll enjoy the story. But as an adult, I definitely still just enjoy it because it makes me feel good. It made me feel good then, makes me feel good now. It's one of my favorite movies to rewatch. Another movie I have to mention anytime I talk about my favorite movies is The Matrix. And if you watch a lot of my movie reviews, you'll know I'm not a huge science fiction fan. I prefer science fantasy. I don't like hard science fiction. It's not that interesting to me. But when it comes to stuff like Star Wars or Star Trek, the science fantasy stuff, the stuff that doesn't really care about the science, cares more about just the premise and the idea and the concept behind it, I love those types of movies. And I walked into The Matrix expecting to hate this film, but was very, very surprised. I thought it was just going to be a hard science fiction thing with a bit of kung fu fighting. The trailers really misled me. And what really blew me away about this movie was the fact that there were twists and turns all the way from the beginning to the end, and none of which I'll spoil here today. If you don't know the twists and turns, you should probably see this movie before somebody spoils it for you. But this is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I'll explain why. But a lot of things blew me away with this movie. Obviously, the plot twists and all of the different things there. The cinematography, I'd never seen anything like it at this point. And of course, it's kind of been done to death now. It's been parodied a million different ways. It's become a cliche, but at the time, I had never seen anything like it. But it was the plot twist that I think really, really threw things around. I didn't know what to expect walking into that movie, and I definitely got something completely different than I expected. But I think what really draws me back to watching the first Matrix more than the rest is the fight scenes. I've never been a big fan of quick cutting fight scenes. They always kind of bore me. It's just 4 or 5 seconds or 4 or 5 cuts per second. That's not a fight scene to me. I like choreographed. I like well filmed. I like well stylized. That's something you really get with The Matrix. All of these different special effects are fantastic, but it's the practical effects and the actual fighting that looks so good to me. And even though when I go back and look at it now, the CGI is not that great, it's still those fighting scenes that look so good to me, specifically because of the way they were filmed. But I will tell you, I enjoyed the first movie so much that I've watched it maybe a dozen times, but I've only ever seen the sequels once, and that was in the theaters, and they were so disappointing to me, I could not enjoy them. In fact, it kind of destroyed my enjoyment of the first movie. This is one of those things where I just genuinely joke that this ended with the first movie. I'm so glad they never made a second or a third movie because I don't like those movies. I like to pretend they don't exist. Another movie I walked into fully expecting to hate was Fight Club, and it turned out to be one of my all-time favorite movies. And when this movie came out, it had like this dude bro atmosphere about it. Only jocks and dudes are going to enjoy this film. But I really think this is a film for just about everybody. Now, I know it has like a history of toxic masculinity, and this is what's wrong with men, and people will point back at this movie but as being one of the problems. But when I look back at this movie and I rewatch it now, I still don't see that. I still see this as just a wonderful, wonderful story to be told. And I'm going to avoid spoilers here because if you haven't seen this movie, I really think you should. But Edward Norton, Brad Pitt do a fantastic job in this movie, and there is a bit of a twist in the film, and the twist when I saw it for the first time absolutely blew me away. But that's not what brings me back to rewatching this movie. What it really comes down to is the overall themes of the movie and the fact that this movie is really left open to interpretation in a lot of different ways. Specifically, the meaning behind all of this, what the writer is trying to say, what the director is trying to say. Every time I watch this movie, and I do rewatch it once every couple of years, especially when something bad happens in my life, my divorce, or I end up getting very sick, or someone I care about dies, I'll rewatch this film because it speaks to me on that level, but it speaks to me in a different way on that level every time I rewatch it. For example, the very first time I saw this movie, I was suicidal, I was miserable, I just wanted to die, and I was eating myself to death, and one line from this movie really resonated. Are you even trying to hit rock bottom? And I really thought to myself, am I trying to hit rock bottom? Because I'm still leaving the house, I'm still going to shows, I'm still hanging out with friends, I'm still running my business. Am I really trying to hit rock bottom? And if not, why? And maybe I should be. Maybe I should be throwing myself entirely at it. Now, I'll tell you that this movie did a lot of damage to my life because I did do that for the next 7 years. I was a shut-in. I didn't really do anything. I didn't ever leave the house, and I ate myself to 600 pounds, in part because this movie inspired me in a very wrong way. But when I rewatched this after my divorce, I think I got the actual message behind this movie, which is, sometimes life sucks. And the things that we think are so important in life are not that important. We need to focus on the stuff that is. But beyond that personal stuff, this is just a really good movie. It's really well filmed. The fight scenes are fantastic. The story behind it is fantastic. It's got so much in it that you can rewatch it a second or third time and catch things you may not have caught the first time. I don't know. Again, it's probably nostalgia goggles a lot for this movie for me. But when I rewatch it now, it's just as good as it ever was. Again, some of the practical effects and some of the special effects don't really hold up, but for the most part, it really does. It really does. I think this is a masterpiece. When it comes to indie films, when it comes to romantic films, I think this is probably my all-time favorite in that genre, Punchdrunk Love. And yes, I know some of you who've never heard of this movie or seen this movie see Adam Sandler's and you're thinking it's a comedy. It's absolutely not a comedy. This is not an Adam Sandler film. This is definitely a pet project that he just happened to participate in, even though his acting performance in this is incredible. He is so good in this movie. Since so many people are going to be unfamiliar with this movie, I'll summarize it a little bit. Adam Sandler plays a person who's probably somewhere on the spectrum. He's fairly awkward, fairly obsessive, and he owns a small business, and he ends up meeting a girl and falling in love. And then a little subplot to that, he also gets into some trouble by calling a phone sex line and deals with the drama of that at the same time, getting scammed and getting taken advantage of, while also trying to make this relationship, which is probably, based on the character, the very first relationship in his life. I think what really sells me on this movie is the character Adam Sandler plays is awkward and unique and bizarre and obsessive, but not in a way that's unrelatable. The character is very, very relatable to almost everyone I've ever shown this movie to. You can find a little bit of yourself in this character. They don't overdo it. They don't oversell it. He's not just like stupid and awful and disgusting, though he does some really stupid stuff in the movies. It all seems believable. It all seems reasonable. It seems like a real person. It definitely seems like an actual person rather than just a character, meant to deliver the plot. And I don't know if it's just me, but having been fairly awkward my whole life, being unusual, being kind of fat and ugly and weird looking and angry just like this character, seeing that character fall in love, seeing things work out for him, I love that in movies. They don't really do that often enough. Normally it's just beautiful boy and beautiful girl, and maybe one of them isn't doing so well in life, or maybe one of them's a little bit awkward. But when they're very unusual, very different, very abnormal, that's when I love it. And when I can see a love story like that, it always speaks to me in volumes, and this is a perfect example of that. Also, I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan, and I wanted to include him here on this list. I think I've liked everything he did with varying degrees of success, but I think easily my favorite movie from him was the very first movie I ever saw by him, and that's Reservoir Dogs. And if you haven't seen this one and you're a Quentin Tarantino fan, I don't know how you've skipped this one, because I think it is probably one of his best. And I think what makes this my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie is later on in Quentin Tarantino's life, he began to realize he could do whatever he wanted. He became very self-aware, almost to the point of parody in some of his movies, and you can see that as early on, in my opinion, as Pulp Fiction. He knows he's a master at his craft, he does whatever he wants, and I love that about him. I really do. But this movie seemed humble. This movie seemed not self-aware. He was just making a very, very good movie here, and all of the elements are there. The blood, the dialogue, the character work. I mean, everybody that's in this movie, you'll immediately recognize them. Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Steve Buscemi. These are amazing actors, but they immediately dissolve into the characters that they play because the dialogue is fantastic. And it's some of the best dialogue of any movie that I've ever seen in the Quentin Tarantino universe. But specifically the torture scene, you'll see that. You'll know what I'm talking about. The torture scene is just so memorable and so good that when I played Grand Theft Auto 5, when I played Wolfenstein, when it came time for the torture scenes, I booted up the song from this soundtrack for those torture scenes because it fits it just so perfectly. What an amazing movie. And from an amazing director who's literally done no wrong, in my opinion. And this is the best of the bunch. And there's 5 of my favorite movies. The problem is, it's really hard to say that this is my top 5 favorite movies. This is just 5 movies I really, really like. If I were to make a full list, it would be 100 or 150 movies long. I love the Marvel Universe. I love some DC films. I love all the nerdy stuff. I love Lord of the Rings. There's so many comedies I wanted to fit on this list that I just couldn't. But I wanted to give you an idea of some of the movies that I do love and that I do enjoy and why I love them and why I enjoy them, in the hopes that we have similar tastes, and maybe that'll give you a point of reference for my movie reviews moving forward. And don't get me wrong, these are 5 very, very good movies, but I'm no movie snob. I like more movies than I dislike, vastly more. I think that's one of the biggest issues with my movie reviews. I like almost everything I see. Now, I do think I can still fairly criticize everything that I see. I can say what was wrong about it, what was not good about it, and what other people may not like about it. But for the most part, I'm a fairly easygoing movie viewer. I just enjoy movies. As long as it doesn't upset me, as long as it doesn't irritate me, as long as it's done so bad that it throws me out of the moment, I'm probably going to like your movies. So I'm probably the ultimate moviegoer. They probably love people like me for that. So do me a favor, let me know what you thought about these 5 movies in the comments section below. Let me know what you think about my movie reviews overall. Let me know if it's something that I should just probably quit doing, or if it's something you guys are enjoying. And if you're not enjoying it, does it bother you that it's on the channel? Let me know, guys. I'm looking for your feedback on this one. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I love you very much, and I'll speak with you again soon.